The Aston Martin Valkyrie already looks insane enough on paper, using a mid-mounted 6.5-liter V12 paired with a KERS-style hybrid powertrain, but the Aston Martin hypercar is not running out of crazy anytime soon. The car itself is still taking shape. Aston Martin is applying some final tweaks to the exterior design, and this week they've shared some more borderline unbelievable details about the project. For instance, the Aston Martin badge itself was actually deemed too heavy for the car, but Aston Martin felt that a sticker would be too cheap. The solution, a chemical-etched aluminum badge just 70 microns thick, 30% thinner than a human hair, and 99.4% lighter than the wing badge that Aston uses on its production cars. That's pretty close to it not existing in this time-space continuum at all. Another example of the lengths to which Aston Martin and Red Bull F1 engineers went to try to save weight is the center high-mounted stoplight, which is mounted on the very tip of the small shark fin that tapers off the roof of the car. The LED light itself is just 5.5 mm wide and 9.5 mm tall, effectively existing within the already thin shark fin. And of course, traditional door mirrors were deemed to be too much of an aerodynamic drag and have been replaced by rear-facing cameras mounted in the flanks, with the images fed to two screens mounted in the car's A-pillars. The lack of mirrors also allows for a less interrupted peripheral field of vision, which is one of the aspects of race cars that Aston Martin engineers have tried to achieve in the Valkyrie, along with the placement of all switchgear on the steering wheel, as in an F1 car. All of the car's vital signs are displayed on a screen integrated into the steering, which itself is designed to be detachable in order to aid driver ingress and egress, and it will also make the drivers feel like they're driving a street-legal F1 car, which is arguably the Valkyrie's aim. It's been a tremendous challenge to make the interior packaging work, Aston Martin Creative Director of Interiors Matt Hill said. We've embraced Red Bull Racing's Formula One ethos and approached it from a different angle than conventional road car design. In this instance, we've started from a position where you think something is impossible and work at it until you find a way to make it work. We've been fighting for millimeters everywhere, but the battle has been worth it, as it's been fantastic seeing customers try the interior buck for size. They love the ritual of getting in and how it feels to be sat behind the wheel. They're also genuinely surprised at how the car just seems to swallow them. You really do have to sit in it to believe there is genuine space for two large adults. Minimalism is definitely the theme of this hypercar, which is expected to be lighter than the porker known as the Mazda MX-5 Miata while delivering around 1,100 horsepower. Aston Martin is still keeping many details of the car under wraps, but it's safe to say that the production version may be even more futuristic than the concept car itself. I would say we're around 95% of the way there with the exterior design, Aston Martin Creative Director of Exterior Design Miles Nürnberger said. Much of what you see is actually the structure of the car, so this had to be signed off on relatively early in the project. The remaining areas of non-structural bodywork are still subject to evolution and change as Adrian Newey continues to explore ways of finding more downforce. The new outlets in the body are a case in point. Ordinarily, the last thing we'd want to do to one of our surfaces is cut a hole in it, but these vents work the front wing so much harder that they've found a significant gain in front downforce. The fact that they are so effective gives them their own functional beauty, but we finessed them without impacting on their functionality. That they also serve as windows through which to view the fabulous wing section front wishbones is a welcome bonus. But the design of the Valkyrie, as with F1 cars, is dictated largely by aerodynamics, with the generation of downforce being one of the engineering priorities. These goals have dictated much of the car's bodywork, with the lower tub contours following the space between the venturi tunnels that run along the sides of the cockpit floor. This lends the Valkyrie the appearance of sitting high off the ground, though in reality the seating position is effectively on the floor of the tub itself. These tunnels are responsible for much of the car's downforce, drawing air to the rear diffuser while keeping the top of the car largely free from other aerodynamic devices aimed at generating downforce. There are still many things we've yet to learn about the car. The debut of the production version is still a year away, and Aston Martin will be tweaking its interior and exterior until then. The company still plans to make just 175 Valkyries, with 25 of them to be built solely for track use. The first examples are scheduled to be delivered in 2019. We wouldn't be surprised if Aston Martin finds ways to shave a few more pounds from the car before then, and prospective owners are probably looking at ways to shave a few more pounds themselves to avoid being a burden to the car's curb weight.
Of all the Nissan Z cars, arguably to endure the most today, the original 240Z, and the sleek and twin-turbocharged Z32-300ZX of the 1990s. And the designer of that car, Toshio Yamashita, wasn't just content to design rad cars back in the day. He's been helping teach the art of car design to the next generation, so he shared the fascinating process he uses to think about car design and brainstorm new cars. Yamashita's design credits include everything from being the lead over the Z32-300ZX to helping with the Air 34 Skyline, 350Z, Infiniti Q45 and even the Nissan Titan pickup. More recently, he served as a professor of transportation design at Tokyo Metropolitan University, where he researched electric vehicle design that would help keep Tokyo's environment clean. He also founded his own design company, Interabang Design. Yamashita said he originally went to school to become an architect, but his father thought he was too small to be on construction sites and signed Yamashita up for the industrial design program instead. He got his start at Nissan in 1968 in parts design for the A10 Violet, and finally got his big design lead break in April 1984 beginning work on the design of what would become the Z32 generation Nissan Z car. Yamashita worked as one of two lead designers on the Z32 alongside Isao Sono. At the time, the Z car was really important to Nissan's bottom line and reputation as an automaker, especially in the United States. The president of Nissan North America would say to us, "Z car is rice," Yamashita recalled. The president referred to rice as Japan's staple food, not the racist-ish term people have for Asian tuner cars. He meant it as if the Z were a key life-giving food for Nissan itself. Please be careful to design it. The message, Yamashita says, was clear: do not fail. Birth of a kid and also the Z32. Much like the original 240Z, Yamashita's design for the 300ZX was a bit of an outlaw design. Nissan originally wanted designers to submit designs for both the 300ZX as well as the new Silvia, the 240SX in America, but Yamashita broke the rules to submit only a Z car. Yamashita says he did his design work on that initial 300ZX proposal at home. He and his wife just had a child, so when she and the baby were away with her parents, Yamashita used his alone time to sketch and perfect the 300ZX. While new fatherhood is more than enough of its own reason to only be able to fit in one sketch, the 300ZX was the only design Yamashita was truly interested in of the two Nissan wanted. Yamashita stuck his 300ZX onto the board of submitted designs anyway without a Silvia design made, and it was chosen as the winner. Sleek, elegant and aggressive, it cut a stark contrast against its predecessor, the boxy and angular Z31-300ZX, moving the car out of its thoroughly 1980s looks and into the high-tech and promising 1990s. From there, the car went from research to creation and then into production. Yamashita was passionate about making his 300ZX look and feel like a true sports car. He'd been impressed early on by the 240Z, whose prototype sat in the hallway when he first came to Nissan in 1968. He said that pretty sports car made his heart beat like a train with excitement. "First my impression is whoa," said Yamashita of the 240Z he'd snuck a peek at, growing wide-eyed as he explained his wonder. Like the 240Z, the 300ZX was heavily influenced by American car culture. Yamashita visited the United States at the start of the production phase, stopping in California, Dallas, and Detroit to research why the Z was such a big hit in America. What makes a Z car, and what must go into a new one? First off, the proportions had to get lower and wider to fit the wide-open spaces of the United States that Japan simply didn't have. Yamashita recalled reworking his sketch at the hotel upon realizing this key difference between the US and his home market in Japan, where streets are much narrower. With an increase in width, the car still had to be low to look proportional, and like a sports car. Second, more aerodynamic cars were now the main trend. Big Detroit-style muscle cars with folded edges were being replaced by smoother, softer shapes that were seen as more efficient and modern. The land yachts of yore were considered wasteful, and there was a big push to be kinder to the environment. "I don't care about the environment with a sports car, but I work at Nissan, so I have to care about the environment," Yamashita said in a frank statement about his design. Good design was good business, though, so the newest Z car had to be rounded and smooth, even though Yamashita admits that 60s muscle cars like Dodge Chargers are among his favorites. He even likened the final rear shape of the Z32 to a piece of corn, and used frameless, smooth side windows to make the design even sleeker. Yamashita was so adamant about his vision for the Z32 300ZX that Nissan engineers nicknamed him Mr. Yadashita, as Yada loosely translates into no for all the suggestions he shot down. The headlamps, which were designed with large clear covers as a callback to the original 240Z, were a big point of contention. Engineers asked for easier to a more upright, easier to design set that laid up at a 45-degree angle or that popped up from the front, but Yamashita held firm on his original 60-degree angle spec to maintain the car's sleek shape. "I don't care about mechanics. I care about design," Yamashita said. In the end, Yamashita ended up finding very small projectors, a new design for the time for the engineering team to use. It's highly unusual for a designer to suggest technology back to the engineering team, but he was adamant about his design. Lamborghini later even used the 300ZX's headlamps on the updated Diablo. The Z31's pop-up headlamps, cool as they are, seem hilariously dated in comparison. That long, low silhouette was paramount to the car's sporty image, though. The low-angled cabin-forward design made the nose of the car look longer than it really was, despite the fact that its twin-turbo V6 engine was shorter than the original 240Z's inline-six. It also had a longer wheelbase with short overhangs for an elongating effect. The curved shapes also presented an engineering challenge, but Yamashita was adamant that they keep the shape of the design intact. He said that around 30 prototype windows were rejected in order to protect the shape. Likewise, the antenna had to be re-engineered to be moved from the front fender to the back of the car, where it worked better with the low design. From sketches, the car went into modeling and then into production. The car launched in June 1989 in the US market and went on to become one of the most celebrated designs in sports car history. How to design your own cars. But let's back up a bit. Yamashita's biggest contribution to the Z32 wasn't his refusal to compromise. It was his original idea, sketched out and ultimately chosen for Z-car glory. One of Yamashita's lasting contributions to automotive design has been his willingness to teach younger designers and enthusiasts what he knows about designing a car, so he walked the attendees at ZCON through an example sketch to demonstrate his thought processes. Creating tension is key to Yamashita's design sketches. The pressure and thickness of lines on a sketch are key to showing this tension visually, with a stronger line signifying a darker space in the sketch. The C-pillar of the 300ZX, for example, was especially hard to design as it was fairly thick but still needed to show some visual tension from all angles. Next, a car needs to have a form in order to make sense. Yamashita combined a circle and a cube as the basis for his example car, the combined shape of which he used as a guide to start drawing the shape of his car in a side view. He overlaid the sheet of paper with this basic form with another piece of paper to add character lines for the side, roofline and wheel position of the car. Character lines are the creases that give visual interest to the side of a car, under the belt line defined by the bottom of a car's side windows. His next sketch was of a quarter view looking at the car from the front left corner, which is an essential intermediary step in his design process. Details like headlamps would come later in the design process, but here is where the sections of the car like doors and hoods were devised. The wheeled shape then starts to be flashed out into a full car. After this, Yamashita overlays his quarter view to create a second quarter view where details like intakes and headlamps can be drawn in. You can fill it in with pastels to add color if you'd like, but Yamashita mainly worked in black and white for his example. Of course, the type of shading used in a sketch can signify not only the shape of each form and where the shadows would fall, but the materials used. It's easy to tell, for example, lustre chrome versus regular matte shading based on how the lines are filled in using only pencil. He started adding a dark shadow under the belt line, and then a roof shadow, all of which were carefully blended with his finger, with the lines sharpened further by erasing the excess shading around it with an eraser. Yamashita even cut a piece of paper as a guide for his eraser to clean up the bottom shadow of the car. Then came the character line shadows on the side of the car, which gave Yamashita's example a vaguely McLaren 570S-like look to the side. Once again, curves cut out of paper get trimmed into shapes to serve as guides for more shadowing added to the car. Detail gets added to the wheels then too. But Yamashita's sketch was left without filling in the headlights and details. It's not a new Z, just an experiment, he clarified. While computer programs like Photoshop get a lot of use now in car design, Yamashita still prefers to work in pencil. His old-school method of teaching how a car design comes together has been passed on to some of his former students, some of whom now work for Toyota and Nissan. He emphasizes having to create the most effective design for the customer of a car above all else. Engineering for cost and the company's other concerns, he argued, is engineering's concern. Yamashita works on some packaging concerns, but that's about all. Good styling needs to remain a designer's primary concern, and they should always remember to push back against engineering to encourage the use of newer technologies and other trick solutions to preserve a solid design. Yamashita wants to feel something new in each design, and reflect who he is in his own designs. After all, can you imagine a 300ZX with pop-ups standing nearly straight up like a Miatas or 944s? I can't.